Hey everybody, how you doing? Tom Barnes here. Stories from the 78. You're out shopping right now because it's the holidays. You're looking for like that unique stocking stuffer. And if you have a fan of horror in your life, a person who just can't get enough of like Stranger Things and that crazy movie Weapons that came out earlier this year, or any other Insidious movie, The Conjuring, whatnot, there's great storytelling happening right here in Chicago. I have interviewed several authors in this year alone that have written horror novels that are from Chicago. And the unique thing about that is every author that I've interviewed about horror and writing horror novels have been women, which is a fascinating and inspiring turn of events as far as horror. One of them, a woman that I interviewed, was recognized by Stephen King, and she's in his forward of an updated version of his book. So there's something about Chicago right now in the Midwest. And if you go to Avondale, there's a lot of cool horror stores and stuff like that. There's something percolating in the air in Chicago about horror genre in general. And I wanted to talk to you about this book, The Ever End, by my friend Audrey Wilson. It's an incredible book. She's got Midwest roots. She went to Columbia. She is in Chicago and in the burbs. The story takes place in Iowa. I welcome her now because this is a perfect stocking stuffer for the holidays, or if you want to buy it sooner. Anyway, Audrey, how are you?
Hey, Tom, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Happy Thanksgiving week. I
Yes.
appreciate you jumping on the line here to chat with me a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, you've written this fantastic book. I got it right here.
Awesome.
I mean, this book is a little terrifying. The Ever End that came out in August. Is that right?
Yep. Yep, it came out in early August. Yeah, I think a little terrifying is a good way to describe it. I've heard it called creepy, unsettling. Terrifying is another one too. It's also been called.
Yeah, and full disclosure, I think I was first introduced to your book. I mean, this is going back a few weeks. It's just
Yeah.
been insane with life gets in the life's way, right? So I
Yes.
really wanted to do this around Halloween because I love Halloween. So this book is my jam for sure.
Awesome.
But didn't get to it till now, so I apologize. But this perfect stocking stuffer, and I love the fact that Chicago has in Chicago area. There's a lot of authors that live in and around our city. I think a lot of people don't realize how many authors that they've seen their work on the screen, in bookstores, wherever, are in our vicinity of the Chicago area. And you are a Chicagoan, right? You from the,
Absolutely. Yep.
why don't you
Yep.
give me a
Born
little
and
background?
raised. Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in the Chicagoland area. I live out in the suburbs now, but born in the city, grown up here my whole life. And you'll also notice that even reflected in a lot of my work. A lot of it, even if it's not directly set in Chicago, a lot of it is either referencing Chicago or some characters from Chicago. Like I always try to kind of tie it back because it really does kind of hold a special place in my heart.
And
Um,
well, go ahead.
oh, no, no, that was pretty much it.
I was going to say you've been in the industry, as we say, for a few years now, and you've done screenwriting for TV. You went to Columbia, right? And then you've written, was it like over 12 books? Is that right?
So I wish I'd written over 12 books. I've written over 12 screenplays.
Screenplays. I'm
Um,
sorry. I know I saw 12. I apologize but
no, that's all right.
screenplays are
Like,
mini books, right? If not bigger.
yeah, eventually, I hope to have written that many novels. But yeah, I've written over 12 screenplays, television pilots. I used to actually work for Colleen Kelly, who hosts Family
Mhm.
Travel with Colleen Kelly, who I know you know.
Yeah.
And so I used to write for her show as well. I have an Emmy nomination as a producer for working for that show also, which was pretty exciting.
So how is it, writing for television versus writing for a novel?
Whereas it's really a totally different beast, and in a good way. Like I enjoy both screenwriting and fiction writing for different reasons. I'm very much like a storyteller. Like I love the outlining process of writing, so I love
Mhm.
kind of jotting down the different beats that are going to happen in the story, kind of scene by scene. That's how it kind of plays out in my head. I think because I love movies so much that's kind of how I see my stories. Um, and for that reason, screenwriting is fun for me in that it's very quick and immediate, and I kind of get to get it all out in a shorter period of time. Whereas writing a novel, you're really kind of getting really into the weeds and like into the characters' heads and kind of into the thick of it, which is fun in itself because you really get to kind of immerse yourself in whatever world you're creating. But it also can be a little more frustrating in terms of like if I'm feeling impatient and I want to kind of get the story out there, I'm going to lean more towards writing it as a screenplay because it feels a little bit more quick.
Oh, but do
Yeah.
you feel like then you can't tell the story fully the way that
Yeah.
you want?
That is exactly the problem. So that's kind of the other half of it. I feel like the last couple of years, I've actually focused my attention more on fiction writing for that reason. My publisher of the other end, I've got a really good publisher, Bywater Books. They're also publishing my next book. So it's nice to kind of have that knowledge out there that I've got a home for my next novel. You know, I've got a place that my story will be told. Whereas with a screenplay, there's so much that has to happen before you can actually see that story told, you know, on the big screen. I've yet to have that actually happen, aside from a couple of projects that I worked on in college, where I've sold a screenplay that actually got made into a film. That's another dream of mine, of course, but it just takes a lot more time for that to happen, a lot more money, and a lot more people that have to say yes before that
Well,
can happen.
wait, back up. You just said that you did that happen for you in college.
Yes, yes, I shot a television pilot actually.
What was the
So
pilot?
so it was called The Artists, and I wrote it essentially based off of my experience at an art school at Columbia College.
Ah,
I based it off of kind of different people that I knew there, kind of tied together the story of a girl who was going to art school for the first time based on my own experience.
ah.
And I got together with a few friends of mine who were also students there, and we made it happen. So we shot a 30-minute pilot, really just an incredibly talented cast and crew. It was just a lot of fun, and it really kind of it's you know nothing really ever came of it after that. It won a couple of awards, which was exciting, but
Sure.
it's nice in a way now looking back because I'm like that kind of encapsulated my time at school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a nice little bow on your school tenure,
Yeah,
right? Getting something sold that you created out of nothing. That's, I mean, it's amazing what like artists do or screenwriters or writers, you know, where they literally from their head put it out there and people like it enough to want to publish it, to want to produce it, and to want to direct it, right? Like, I guess those are all the
definitely.
tiers. So you're kind of in the thick of it, though. I mean, you wrote this horror novel, if you will, with a woman that goes to visit her boyfriend's family in Iowa, which everybody knows Iowa could be a scary place if you turn down the wrong cornfield. If
Exactly. It
anybody's
feels a
seen
little.
Children of the Corn,
Yep, it feels a little isolated. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, kind of that ominous feeling of the cornfields. I spent a lot of time too growing up visiting family in more rural towns, and so
Mhm.
I really kind of pulled a lot of those settings into this story. You know, a lot of that kind of feeling of looking out over the cornfield at night and kind of feeling this kind of eeriness.
Yeah.
That's definitely stuff that you'll find in the other end.
Yeah, I was in college at Illinois State University,
Oh, okay.
and I my senior year there was a new apartments that were built, and they were built on the outskirts of town. So literally, you walk out my door and there's a cornfield, which was cool in the fall or in the summer when I moved in. Got really eerie though in the fall, you know, with Halloween, and you know you'd hear things out there. There's rodents running around. And I saw Children of the Corn many times when I was a kid. So you know that in itself is a terrifying setting, so I understand why choosing that was such a good muse. But where did you come up with like the ideas, just the horror story that you came up with? Is it some are you fascinated by horror? Because typically, you know, for years and years, you know, the horror industry dominated by, you know, by men, just because women didn't get the opportunity, right? But I've seen
Right.
it in the last few years where more and more women are writing more and more horror right here in Chicago. There's a couple other novelists that have written books that have come out this year that I've interviewed on this very show about their work. So I'm curious, you know, is it just because you just like it, or was it something else that, you know, spurred your imagination?
That's a great question. I have a soft spot for horror. It's a genre that I have loved ever since I was maybe 10 or 11. I think that what I love most about it is what like the feelings that it can elicit in people. You know,
Hmm.
not just fear, which of course is synonymous with horror, but
Sure.
also like kind of this real like guttural, like psychological terror. And I think that's kind of the horror that I love the most. Like the horror that's not just going to, use jump scares to try to get people worked up. It's going to actually like get into their mind and mess with them. And I think that to me, that's just kind of the creepiest type of horror. So a lot of times that's the kind of horror and thriller that I write is like the type that's going to really be insidious in getting into your mind and like sticking with you. In terms of the other end specifically, I think the initial idea just kind of came out of what would be the worst type of situation that somebody can be in where they feel so obligated to kind of agree to whatever people say to do, kind of this
Yeah.
this argument of like politeness versus that gut instinct,
Very
you know?
Midwest.
Yes, exactly,
Uh-huh.
exactly. I've drawn inspiration too from stories like Get Out. I'm thinking of Ending Things had this very kind of interesting draw to me of kind of that like rotting rural backdrop.
Hmm.
And so I just kind of liked this idea of putting this character, Margot, in the other end, in a situation where she kind of couldn't get out. And it wasn't necessarily like she was chained to a bed or trapped in a room and couldn't get out. It was her wrestling with her people pleasingness and her
Hmm.
politeness and her love of her fiance. And all of that making her just kind of be trapped in this family that she has only just met.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds you used the word get out a couple of times there, and if anybody's seen the movie Get Out, you can kind of relate a little bit to what you're saying about the politeness. And if growing up in the Midwest, for sure, you're taught to, I mean, I know everywhere well, you would hope they teach it everywhere, but I feel like the Midwest just is known for our politeness and
Yeah.
yeah, like I'll call you later means no, like that kind of thing. But when you have that innocence of the Midwest, like the upbringing, and then you have the backdrop, a lot of people don't realize that I feel like the Midwest is such a great setting for movies. You see movies all the time in New York and
Yep.
Los Angeles and now in, Atlanta, and all, fine, whatever. But some of I mean, Haddonfield, Halloween. I mean, I know that
Hmm.
wasn't really technically filmed in
But the
Illinois,
setting,
but the setting was
yeah.
Illinois, very Midwest, and a few other things, movies that have filmed in Detroit and stuff like that, horror movies. But I feel like the Midwest is such a great setting because the seasons change here,
Yeah.
and you have that at autumn changing where the leaves are different colors. You just don't get that out in California. And there's something, New York is New York, right? Like
Right.
it's always gritty and backdroppy, but like I don't know, the Midwest, I feel like there's a big palette where you can see different settings of a cornfield or just like rolling hills, or prairies or the lake
Yes.
for that matter. So, and many, many lakes within, you got like up in Michigan, there's lakes everywhere, Minnesota, so on and so forth. So,
Absolutely.
did you grow up, being from the Chicago area? Were there any lore horror stories that you were fascinated with? Like from my area, I'm from the Southwest side. I grew up in Palos Hills, and a lot of people knew about Resurrection Mary and Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. So I'm curious, do you have anything like that where you grew up that kind of piqued your interest, and then these movies came out that really like suck you in when you were, said, like 10 years old? So I
Hmm.
imagine some of that had to happen at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say I can't think of any lore specifically, but I know that religion has always fascinated me.
Oh,
And
sure, yeah.
that plays a big part in the other end. And kind of growing up going to more rural areas, I saw, really how a lot of these communities were centered around churches. And I kind of wanted to take that a step further and really kind of dig deeper into the dark side of religion. I personally don't consider myself to be particularly religious. I don't have any problems with people who choose to practice religion, of course, but there's also a lot of sides to it that can be kind of dark and eerie. And we've seen it since the Exorcist and the Omen and
Yeah,
Rosemary's Baby,
exactly.
like all of these things that kind of have these religious undertones. And I think it's clearly a universal thing that scares people a little bit. And so that's kind of something that I drew a lot of inspiration from with the Ever End, was kind of that rural religion, and kind of the more conservative side as well.
Yeah, and if anybody's driven through central Illinois or central Iowa or anywhere, like you get that rural vibe. Like we were talking. I remember just this summer I went to like Geneva, Illinois, and you drive through a town before you hit Geneva, maybe like I don't know, 5 miles before you hit Geneva, and it's like this small town. And it's like got a little main street with a restaurant, a gas station, a couple other things, and then there's the church,
Right,
and there's like a row of houses like off the street, and then nothing. It's just cornfields for miles until you hit like Geneva. And you think about, man, like the Midwest, outside of like if you took out Chicago and you took out Gary, Indiana, and Detroit, that's what the Midwest is filled with, just
right,
little towns like that, like going to Bloomington Normal and taking side streets all the way there because you wanted to avoid the police because you don't want to get a ticket for your sixth time when you were a senior in college. You did those things, you know what I'm saying? So
right.
so yeah, I don't know, I feel like I feel like horror, especially now, with the Midwest, it just plays such a great component to these stories, and it sounds like you found a great one here with your new book. So I imagine there's so much more that we can discuss within the book, but I don't want to give the whole thing away. But you
Right. Don't
mentioned,
want too many spoilers.
but when you were growing up, what were some of the horror movies that kind of got you to be a fan of the genre?
Yeah, I like I mentioned, The Exorcist. I remember that was one of the first ones that truly terrified me.
Yeah.
I think I was 11 or 12, and I'd gotten real into horror movies, and I begged my parents to let me rent The Exorcist from Blockbuster, of course.
Uh-huh.
And they were like, "It's going to be too scary. You're not going to like it." And I was like, "No, it'll be fine." I didn't sleep that night.
No.
It stuck with me. And there were other ones too that I really enjoyed. The Sixth Sense has always been one of my
Oh yeah.
favorites. I think for me, really, like horror that has kind of an emotional element to it, or like relationship based horror is really fascinating to me, because
Hmm.
that's what kind of hooks you into a story. Whether you're telling a horror story, a romantic comedy, a drama, it's all about connecting to the characters. And so those are ones that I've really enjoyed. The Sixth Sense, the others, ones that kind of focus on relationships.
Have you seen Weapons yet?
Yes, I loved Weapons. It was
Yeah,
very
me
good.
too.
I heard it's getting a prequel too, so I'm excited.
Oh, well, it makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. That movie was such a surprise, but you're right. It wasn't like gore,
Right.
complete gore. It was like there was a story. Like you mentioned, you said the word insidious
Mm,
earlier, and that reminded me of the movie Insidious, which is like a mind-bending, story in of itself. And then, you got the Conjuring movies that have put like Ed and Lorraine Warren on the map as far
right.
as the demonologist and medium and all that kind of stuff. It just fascinates me in general. So I'm always pumped. I think we would have been besties growing up
I
because
think so too. I think so too.
I did not have many friends that were girls when I was a boy that wanted to watch any kind of horror movie whatsoever. I was a kid, was like, can we watch Phantasm? I haven't seen that yet. I see that at the video store. Everybody was like, no, let's watch, Wedding Crashers or something else. So,
It really makes a difference too, because part of the reason I love horror, one, my parents raised me on kind of the classic like monster movies and things like that. But my best friend growing up, she loved horror, and we met when I was about 10 or 11, and she started kind of introducing me to a lot of horror movies, and that's what we would do every sleepover, is we would just watch whatever scary horror movie we could get our hands on.
yeah, I mean, I remember. So, what suburbs you grow up in?
Des Plaines and not Prospect.
Oh, Des Plaines.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, I grew up the southwest version of that, kind of like
Okay.
Oak Lawn,
Okay.
Palos Hills, right? But I like vivid memories of going to Chicago Ridge Mall, which was the mall back in the day. I just talked about this today. It's so bizarre. But going to the mall and seeing like horror movies, you go to the arcade, you get your Sbarro, the arcade, you might hit Walden Books and buy a Stephen King book that you were going to terrify yourself to read, like It or The Shining or Cujo. And then you went to go see your favorite horror movie, which was like a lot of random John Carpenter movies and Wes
Hmm.
Craven movie from when I was going, at least. And as I'm talking to you about it, like I just got this gift, a pre-Christmas gift, and
Oh my God.
it's
That's
it's the
awesome.
Friday the 13th Jason
I
Voorhees
love
book.
that.
Yeah. So I'm a fan. We're kindred spirits.
Yes, clearly.
For people that would love to learn a little bit more about you and perhaps catch a, when you get your show on Netflix and they want to go, I knew her when, where can they find information about you and the projects that you're working on, including upcoming books and where to buy your books?
Absolutely. So everybody can head to my website, www.audreywilsonauthor.com. I have a newsletter as well there that you can sign up for. I let people know about new releases, sometimes writing advice, things like that. You can also follow me. I'm on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Facebook, all under Audrey Wilson Author. And yeah, my current book, The Other End, I've got a copy here too, is
There it is.
currently
Yep.
out. It's available on Amazon.com, on at Barnes and Noble, basically any independent bookstore as well. I always love to support independent bookstores, and almost any of them will order whatever books you want for you. So you can check it out at your local independent bookstore. And my next week is actually a young adult romance, so a little bit of a pivot. And that one is called Dear Unrequited Love Girl, and that comes out next May.
Ooh, unrequited love. I've heard that many
Mhm.
a times over first dates in my life, talking about movies and unrequited love. So, yeah, fascinating indeed. And I forgot to mention earlier, but in your book, The Ever End, you have some characters that are LGBTQ plus, which again is something it's not what's the word I'm looking for? It's that not commonplace in years past, but it's becoming commonplace now because we're in 2025, almost 2026,
Absolutely.
which just makes it more, to me, it just makes it more believable because it's not just like, the typical story of when you think of horror of a bunch of college kids or high school kids at a party and they all look the same doing the same thing and they all die in the end because they're all idiots.
Right, right.
So you got some substance to your stories, which I enjoyed.
Exactly. Yeah, I absolutely I try to do that in a lot of my stories too, is just have representation of all different backgrounds and all different types of people because I do feel it is so important. It's very close to my heart. And it's funny you should say that because when I was at a writing conference this past summer, actually, I had a person come up to me who had just bought my book and The Ever End. And
Mhm.
they said, I love that you have an LGBTQ represented character in a horror novel because it doesn't happen all that often. And so it just meant a lot to me that they found, this connection to a character in one of my books. So it was really nice to hear.
Yeah, and when you hear something like that, you get reassurance from the universe that
Right.
you're doing the thing that connects with people. So if people in your previous encounters with publishers or whatnot that said no to things, you know that you're on the right path and they didn't know what they were talking about. Which
Exactly.
you
Exactly.
work in an industry, and so do I, where there's a lot of people who claim to know what they're talking about, but we come to find out they have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. Well,
Right.
you just got to weed those people out and find your way to the top, and you will do that, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you again for chatting with me. Happy Thanksgiving week and happy holidays coming up here. This will be a great stocking stuffer for people if they choose to wait till the Christmas season, or you can buy it now if you're going to be on vacation in a week in Mexico, like I will. And that's where I'm going to finish. I started the book and I will finish it in Mexico. So thank you again. I appreciate you taking time to chat with me on this dreary evening that we have here in Chicago.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you having me and happy Thanksgiving.